Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Well, no. Welcome to the Brothers of the Serpent podcast is what this is. This was my first appearance on the Brothers of the Serpent podcast with Marty Garza. And I'm posting this now because Marty will be my next guest. And a lot of people wanted to hear me talk with him. They posted this. This was about 9 months ago, beginning of 2023, that we had this conversation. And it was a great conversation. And I had a great conversation with Marty, as you'll see when I put up the next show. But I figured I'd put this up first, and that'll kind of give you some something to go from if you didn't hear it. And yeah, you can always go subscribe to the Brothers of the Serpent podcast. This was episode 274 for them, and labeled UFOs and the Paranormal. So yeah, here it is in its entirety.
UFOs and the Paranormal with Marty Garza and Seriah Azkath. You are listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents. This is Brothers of the Serpent podcast, and we are coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, where we are nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau. So, this is a very special show. I've been wanting to do this for a while. I've been talking with, we're joined by Marty, who you guys know from all the UFO episodes, Marty Garza, and also Seriah, the host of Where Did the Road Go podcast. We've talked a lot with both of these guys, but what I wanted to do was get them on the show and have them talk with each other about the UFO topic. Seriah is very knowledgeable in this, and obviously you guys know that that Marty is as well. And so I've been wanting to do this for a while. So welcome, you guys. Thanks for coming on.
So wait, Marty and I aren't just going to talk about metal the entire show?
Yeah, maybe we should do that. We'll do the UFO. We'll do the UFO stuff on the Patreon.
Yeah, Seriah and I have a shared interest in our musical taste.
Right. So, and I was told it's not heavy. It's black metal, or what was it?
The poster behind me is a black metal poster.
Oh, okay, yeah. So
the Old Man's Child is black metal. At the Gates are kind of melodic death metal. Iced Earth are power metal.
Melodic death metal.
Dimmu Borgir are black metal. Symphonic black metal.
Okay, see, you guys can tell already. I have no idea, right? I just called it death metal, and he was like, "No, get this right."
The closest to death metal would be the At the Gates poster.
Okay, sorry. I apologize.
It's okay. I'll forgive you.
Okay, good. But seriously, it's great to have you guys both here. So I tell you what, we'll start with what's going on right now. I want to get you guys' thoughts on, all the stuff that's happening with, that's basically in the mainstream with UFOs. So Seriah, why don't you start with that? Tell us what you think about what's going, with as few swear words as possible. I mean, you can use some, but try not to.
I think Marty and I have the same word for most of what you're getting from the mainstream, and that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Disclosure is a carrot that has been dangled in front of people for decades, and they just keep getting new people into the field who then also start chasing that carrot that they're never going to get. If the government wanted to tell us stuff, they would tell us stuff. If they don't want to tell us stuff, they're not going to tell us stuff. We're not going to force them into doing anything. And I find it ironic that the same people who generally distrust the government will believe them if they say there's something about UFOs. They've been lying to us forever. Oh, UFOs, there might be some. See, we told you.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And it's the same disinfo games we've been seeing for years. The government is infiltrated UFO groups as early as the 1950s. Jacques Vallée's Messengers of Deception is a great book talking about all of that stuff. The government doesn't do anything that we want them to do.
Right.
They're doing the stuff they want to do. If they're releasing this, there's a reason for it, and it's probably not to tell us the truth about UFOs. It's some level of disinformation.
Yeah.
There might be some grains of truth in there. My guess when you see things like the Tic Tacs and stuff is that's new tech of ours, and they want to see if our guys can figure it out. And if our guys can't figure it out, then China and Russia probably also aren't going to figure it out.
Marty?
I think it's like most things, as I always say, it's a little bit complicated. I believe there are multiple things going on. I agree with everything that Seriah said. I think that's a very good characterization. I think modern day, UFO enthusiasts, UFO Twitter, contingent, they're almost like Charlie Brown and the government is Lucy with a football,
Yes.
It's, how do you not learn? In other words, how many times are you going to go and try to kick that ball that's going to get pulled out from under you? This has happened. It happens on a cyclical basis going back to literally the late 40s. But I think the modern version of this is a little bit more complicated in that I think there are multiple agendas being played out. I think that first we got to recognize a few of the ground rules. One is the government is not monolithic. They do not all see things the same way. And
True.
there are disagreements on policies. I don't care what on any topic. There's always going to be disagreements in how these things should be addressed. And something as complicated as the UFO phenomenon, there are multiple levels of how different departments would handle this type of information and how they would choose to either withhold or disseminate this information. Then,
so can I ask a question real quick? Are you sort of saying that a part of what we're seeing right now, and probably in the past as well, is a product of disagreement between departments or different factions in the government?
I think that's always been the case, but okay. I think part of what's happening, I suspect, and this is obviously speculation. All of this is speculation, but from what I have observed, it appears to me that it is possible that some factual information has leaked, like most things within the government leak, but then they're discredited in one way or another. But what we're seeing, I believe, is an attempt by the Department of Defense to make lemonade out of lemons. Information leaked. They were pressured. There was enough, maybe because of certain people in the government, Harry Reid and maybe some others. There were enough things that were said publicly that there was enough interest brought on the subject that applied a little bit of pressure. So the powers that be said, okay, we're in a bad situation. How do we turn this around to our advantage? And I think there's two obvious things that are going on in terms of that. I think the first is plausible deniability. Given the current state of affairs, it seems logical to me that if we have advanced tech, we do have advanced tech. We don't know to what degree, but we most definitely have a number of unacknowledged platforms. That's indisputable. That you can read through aviation books and you can read statements by test pilots that have said, no, we've flown 15 unacknowledged, programs on 15 unacknowledged programs. So we know there are platforms out there. Now, how sophisticated they are, whether they have, anti-gravitic or any sort of technology like that's a totally separate debate. But regardless, we have technologies that are used over denied territory. And in situations, and I know this is YouTube, so there are certain topics you can't bring up, but when you have potential, sensitive situations, geopolitical situations and things, the last thing you want is, Francis Gary Powers type situation where, advanced technology is recovered by a foreign nation or you get caught with your hand in the cookie jar in some way, right? So by the government acknowledging that there's something in our skies that we don't know what it is, that's providing them with plausible deniability. They can now potentially send drones or some type of platform, some type of aeroforms over denied territory, and then just say, we don't know what they are either. You guys are seeing it. We're seeing them. They're flying over our, restricted airspace and stuff too. So it's providing cover. That's definitely one aspect. Unmistakably, that is one aspect of what's going on.
So they're using the entire UFO topic as a cover for their own covert activities.
And to add to what Marty said, not only is the government not one monolithic thing, but they outsource to a lot of corporations.
Yeah.
And those corporations are not answerable to us. They're private organizations. That's why they do it.
Yeah.
That is something that they learned. That's something that was actually going to come up at some point in this conversation. I'm glad you brought that up. When the Freedom of Information Act was passed, the government quickly learned that the public could potentially become aware of sensitive information, right? So they know how to sidestep that kind of thing. So what they do is they outsource stuff to private corporations that are not subject to the Freedom of Information Act.
Yeah.
And that leads to another, I guess I'll bring this up now. I believe that we are going to see, maybe this year, I believe that it's entirely possible that as a result of all of this public discussion, we may see acknowledgement of the recovery of crash material, UFO crash material, because they've been hinting around a lot about it. I think we're going to possibly find out that yes, there has been crash debris recovered.
Okay, but are you implying? Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, are you implying that crash material is actually just going to be advanced human tech from some?
No, not necessarily.
Okay,
not necessarily.
Okay.
That's the lemons. That's the lemon side, not the lemonade side. In other words, that's the stuff they don't really want to acknowledge, but they may not have any choice. And that's where the second side of the bullshit that's going on right now is they're pretending that they don't know what's going on and they're just as surprised as we are. And they need funding so that they can get to the bottom of this. And if anybody believes that they have not been investigating this since that's 1944. I know a lot of people think that Blue Book or Project Sign was the first. No. If you listen back to, I think it was even UFOs Part 1, I brought up the fact that there was a program that was headed by Henry Cross from Bethel Memorial Institute during World War II related to the Foo Fighters. We don't know much about that, but there was a UFO program or a Foo Fighter program in 1944. So they've been investigating this for a very long time. And to suggest that they would allow anything to go into restricted airspace and not try to get to the bottom of it is just it's insane. They know, I'm not saying that they know what it is, but they've been investigating.
Yeah. And that's it. Anyone who thinks that they just started investigating UFOs recently, you don't know how the government works.
Right.
No. The defense is a big deal. If something is appearing on radar like these things do, and we don't know what they are, they're going to investigate them, and they don't have to tell us about it.
Right.
They don't have to say a word about it. Blue Book and things like that. That was the public face of let's satisfy these people who want to know, but it wasn't the real research. I mean, there was another point. I don't know if I agree about the crashed saucer thing, because I don't think that we're going to find that they're made of the type of stuff we think they are.
Well, that's a complicated one, and I think you'll agree with my assessment of this.
Okay.
This is a wild speculative story of how I believe this has kind of played out. Possible. this is one potential scenario. I believe that as early as 1945 with the Trinity crash, right? It appears that they recovered a craft and debris at Trinity, and then again, potentially in Roswell in 47.
And that was the AEC, right?
The Department of Energy.
Yeah, the Atomic Energy
That's
Commission.
how they've kept this away from the public, because no one ever thought to look into to the Department of Energy. Right. So I think it is entirely possible that in 1945 they recovered material. And this again happened in 47. And if you look at like the public statements at that time, they were a little bit more open about what was going on. Now, I think that they probably thought they were going to get to the bottom of it right away. In other words, they had physical evidence in hand that should surely tell them what this is. But I think that as they got into it, the more they investigated, the less they knew, the less they could understand. And that's where we get into this really weird, complicated version of history and what could potentially be going on here. You see, and as I've mentioned before, back in when I was heavily into this, when I was working for the Encounters TV show, their forums and everything, I was a nuts and bolts ufologist, right? I was firmly in the camp of these are physical craft, physical bodies coming from Zeta Reticuli or some other star system or whatever. And over time, once the blinders kind of came off and I started looking at the data objectively, I started to recognize that's such a small facet of the phenomenon that it doesn't necessarily really represent what the phenomenon truly is. I think that's only one very small aspect of it.
But is it possible that it's just that we're unable to distinguish something that may be 2 or 3 or 4 different phenomena, and that we're kind of grouping them all together?
Well,
I think that's part of it too.
Okay.
Yes, but like for example, maybe refresh my memory.
Like you could maybe separate some of these things and say, okay, so some of this it looks mostly okay, go ahead.
So you have lights in the sky, and lights in the sky, I mean, getting rid of the prosaic things like drones, satellites, misidentifications, those could be formed from natural processes, like earthquake lights. They could be plasma intelligences. They could be craft of some sort coming from somewhere else, but they all look like just lights in the sky. This is the thing.
Yeah.
When you deal with interactions, there are mass sightings where entire groups of people, or like over Mexico City back in the 90s, you had massive UFO sightings that just kept going, and tons of people were seeing them. But for the most part, I think most UFO sightings seem to happen on a very personal level, and you get some of the contact stuff without the UFO sighting as well. So I think there's a number of different things that look similar, but may be different things.
Yeah.
And we don't necessarily know where those lines are or how they're interconnected. It may be just how they interact with us.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Definitely in modern times. In other words, a lot of the things that we see today could be so many different things. Yeah. And I think that is part of the misdirection that's going on with disclosure right now. I think that the official position is everybody standing around pointing to the sky. They want to draw your attention to, lights in the sky that could really be anything. In other words, because again, that it's more an intent to cover for something else. It's not true disclosure.
Right.
But as far as let's say physical craft, physical debris, It's and I guess let me point something out, and that should be obvious to anybody that's followed the phenomenon, but it's worth stating. When we're talking about this phenomenon, it is chock full and comprised of contradictions.
Yes.
Every theory has a counter argument and evidence that will counter almost any, even the firmest information that you think you have. Like, take, for example, physical craft, a physical object that was recovered and taken on the back of a truck and taken to a lab and everything. It would seem obvious that obviously indicates that these are flying machines from some other planet. But let me give you an example of how that is not necessarily the case. In Messengers in the Sky, Jack Vallée talks about Gervais of Tilbury, who in 1211 AD wrote a book, Otia here we go with my pronunciations, Imperialia. And in this book, he talks about a story of that one day, a bunch of people who were in church heard a noise and ran out and saw an anchor stuck in a pile of stones.
This is one of my favorite stories.
Right.
Yep, mine too.
They still have the anchor.
Right.
Right.
Right. One of
recovered
the
crash
people on the
material
ship came down the chain and he died.
Yeah, they grabbed him.
He was surrounded by people and he died. The people on the ship cut the line and left the anchor, and the ship left.
Yeah.
And they kept the anchor and used it to make a door for the church to commemorate that event.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a crazy
That is
story.
not altogether different than the Aurora airship crash of 1897.
Right.
You take Trinity or Roswell in our modern, space age type or, post atomic era versus, the 1211 AD sighting of a sailing ship in the sky, or an airship in 1897. Is it possible that these are just physical manifestations created that are right at the edge of the technological understanding of the individuals present?
Wasn't there a crash in Texas too, and they buried the...
Yeah, that's the Aurora airship.
That's the Aurora one. Okay,
1897.
Okay, yeah.
Right. In other words, to me, this isn't a whole lot different than even, the money diggers that would, use their occult rituals and pray to the spirits to find treasure. In other words, are these all aports? Are these all created for our for our entertainment, or to deceive us, or to lead us to believe something that's not?
But is it do you mean it's a product of humans practicing?
No, I believe it's a product of the phenomenon. The phenomenon appears to be able to. I don't know that the phenomenon, and again, this is speculation, and I may contradict myself multiple times throughout this conversation, right? But I believe that it appears that the phenomenon has the ability to manifest in physical reality in some way. Although I don't know that the phenomenon itself is a physical phenomenon. In other words, it is not necessarily, it's an intelligence of some sort. I don't know what type of intelligence it is. I don't know if it's extraterrestrial or omnipresent. In other words, it's all I can say is it's an intelligence. That much I feel confident enough to say there is an intelligence that is not us. It is not current mankind. Could it be from the mankind in the future? I'm not in that camp, but it's not impossible.
Yeah. I would say I was going to mention apporting, because that's definitely one of the things that could be happening. I do think the fact that you see people tend to have UFO sightings around liminal time periods in their life, and liminality can be stirring up psychic energy, even if they don't realize it. That's when you get poltergeists. That's when you get high strangeness things. And I think this stuff can either be manifested entirely by us without realizing it, or there's something out there that can utilize that energy and manipulate it to create some kind of appearance in our world. You had also said something about trying to take pictures of a fighter jet, I think it was, that was using infrared technology, and you couldn't get a clear photo of it, which immediately made me think of all the blurry photos of paranormal stuff. And John Keel's idea that this stuff moves through the super spectrum, that it's always there, but we can't perceive it. And that just it just clicked a whole bunch of boxes for me. And I talked to people who said that they worked for the military using tracking stuff. Like they would have infrared beams. They could shoot at a camera and it would destroy the camera, which doesn't sound entirely unlike what you hear about stories with cameras and the paranormal. They try to take a picture, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Or the camera never works again. Or, they just get something that's not what they're seeing. If the camera's not picking up the light, but we're picking up sort of on multiple levels and our brain is putting together a picture for us, that picture may not be the same thing as what's actually there. But you do get, in monster sightings, you get footprints and stuff like that are physical, that show something physically was there. Where it gets its shape from, where it gets its form from, may partially depend on us.
I believe that is a very accurate observation. There is a substantial amount of evidence that does suggest that human experience does play some form of role in this. Now, whether this is the collective unconscious or something, I don't know that I necessarily would agree with that, but I can, without question, state that there is a connection between human experiences, and I'm talking traumatic experiences, whether they're physical or mental or that kind of thing. There is a direct connection between those and this type of activity that seems to blur the lines between all of these different things, like you're talking about, whether they're, you're talking Bigfoot and, the wolf, bipedal wolves and all these different things, gnomes, elves, all these, when we look at them and isolated type regions where there'll be this type of activity, a lot of it is really absurd, and it really is. I mean, there's no denying it. It's only when you take that macro view and you start looking at it and see, this is consistent with things that have been discussed throughout history, maybe viewed through a different lens, but ultimately it walks like a duck. It quacks like a duck, even though it may not look like a duck this time. It still appears to follow the same set of rules. And it's almost as though these things are constrained by within certain parameters. They can do certain things and they can't do other things.
Yeah.
We get into this really crazy, that's where you really start getting into the esoteric side of the phenomenon.
When people ask me, "Oh, do you believe in this stuff?" Because you'll encounter someone who finds out you do a show like this, and like, you actually believe in that stuff. And my simplistic way of putting it to them is, people have experienced this stuff throughout history, throughout recorded history, in every culture. They've named it different things. They've called it different things. So, do I believe extraterrestrials are here? I don't know, but something is happening. This is a very human experience that has been experienced cross culture. So unless you think that people are making up the same stuff with different names on it, they're having an experience. It's been there, like I said, all recorded history, and it's across every culture. Yeah. So it's a human experience, if nothing else.
Mankind has always believed in the existence of a non-physical, intelligent realm. Just call it a spirit realm or whatever you want. It's only within the last 120 years or so that we've began to deny the existence of such things.
Right. And I think some people, if they're not, if it's just a side vague thing they look at every once in a while, it's like, okay, so either UFOs are extraterrestrial or they don't exist. Either Bigfoot's an undiscovered ape or it doesn't exist. There's no, when you try to explain to them, it's not that simple. It's probably, it exists, but maybe not the way you're thinking of it. And it may be interconnected to all these other things. People have Bigfoot or UFO sightings, and it almost always follows with poltergeist activity and other weird things like strange lights and stuff like that. Tim Renner started asking people who had Bigfoot sightings, have you seen lights around that area, like unexplained lights? And almost every time someone's like, oh, yeah, those happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and that immediately makes you start thinking of older stories of the Guardians of the Forest and the Wisps. And I mean, you see how it connects to all this different stuff. Like you're saying, like every culture has these ideas, and it seems like they must be sourced from somewhere. So the argument here is that it is an external source of some kind that we haven't been able to define. Yeah.
It's experience no culture has been able to fully explain, because I don't think we have necessarily the capability to fully understand it yet.
Right.
If ever.
Yes.
And I think it's also, this ties to the other ground rule of, I mentioned a couple of them at the beginning. And the other one is that, bottom line, it's not the government that's withholding, information or, the existence of this phenomenon.
Right.
The phenomenon is the one.
The phenomenon is the source of the
control.
deception. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
I think some of the absurdity is purposeful to
absolutely
always interject doubt.
Yes.
You it's like you said before, we want you to believe, but not too much.
Not too much.
Yep.
That's right. Yeah. Right. The phenomenon is the source of the deception. Any disclosure from the government would just be disclosing whatever they've been able to figure out about it. But people, I guess they expect the government has figured it all out, which is crazy.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know.
What else have they figured out? Like point that out to me.
That doesn't mean they haven't learned a lot from it.
Sure. And
they may have a lot of data.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That doesn't mean they know what's going on. All right, let's take a quick break. This is fantastic. Let's take a quick break. We'll come right back. Thank you, guys.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, brothers of the Serpent podcast. I am nursing a massive hangover. Sorry, guys. I brought my B game today, but I'm hanging in there.
You weren't just taking a nap. You're actually like hungover. Okay. I didn't realize that.
I mean, hungover. It was like not so much like drinking hangover, just like late night.
Yeah. Okay.
Tired.
Totally understandable.
There was some drinking involved, though.
Yeah, sure.
But I'm just like, okay. I got a bottle of water. I got this coffee over here, and I have generated one question.
Ooh.
So I guess listening to everything you guys are saying about the breadth of the phenomena, do you think it's possible that this is technology, but it's not like government technology, but perhaps some deeper tech from very ancient times that's been around and could be the cause of all this stuff?
Like a hidden civilization that's just been there the whole time?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it could be Earth-based, or I don't know. I'm just wondering, there's a spiritual aspect to it in a lot of cases, but could that also be some form of technology that is just completely beyond where we are right now to understand?
I would say the fact that we don't know what it is means we can't rule anything completely out.
Yep.
So that's entirely possible. And yeah, there could be something, like if you look at Walter Crutenson's idea of, well, not even his idea, the idea he posits in The Lost Star, Myth and Time, that we're in a binary star system with Sirius. And when Sirius moves closer, it actually brings about a golden age, this whole great year type of a cycle, where we have enhanced psychic abilities and stuff like that. And then you look at like the research of Robert Schoch when in the one, I can't remember the name of the book, but he talks about how psychics in labs perform better during periods of high solar activity.
Is this Forgotten Civilization?
Yeah.
No, he mentions it again in there, but there's another book he wrote about that in particular.
Oh, okay.
Where they came to those conclusions. And as he put it, and I love the way he put it, was that either psychics throughout history have created this grand conspiracy to fake better results during high solar activity, or psychic abilities are real, because it's a very clear pattern. So if there was another solar object that we're getting closer to, it could possibly enhance our connection to the other, connection to other parts of ourselves that we have no current control of, that our conscious mind can't quite control, things that cause poltergeist activity, apports, dreams even, because we have no control over that stuff. So a technology that could perhaps replicate that energy, an ancient technology, a modern technology that could replicate that energy, certainly could cause experiences in people that were very, very real experiences that we're normally not able to access.
Yeah. And so that takes it almost into the realm of physics, because the idea there is that the sun is generating conditions in which certain things take place that look paranormal to us because we don't understand them yet. Right.
Yeah. Cause I'm like, I've been on this sort of line of thinking recently in the past years of just taking like the spirit realm ideas, spirituality, that sort of thing, and physics, and saying, well, if both of these things exist in this universe that we're in, then there is rules about each one. And so that's just more physics to me, right? Physics, like the study of physics is discovering the laws of nature. And so if spirituality and things that happen, phenomena that are spiritual in nature, those are laws of nature continued, right?
Yeah.
So laws of nature we may not have the methodologies to deal with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, but that's just what I'm saying. It's like, could there be tech? Like
Yes.
if you could bring a sun closer to yourself to heighten your ability to have psychic powers,
or replicate the energy that's causing those heightened abilities.
Or you just imagine, so if it is the sun causing it in some way with greater activity,
build more suns.
well, there are other stars that are much more active than ours in terms of, violent solar activity. So you can imagine if there was a race that evolved around one of those stars, that maybe they're just dealing with this all the time. And so it is a part of their regular world, and they've incorporated it into their tech because it's around them all the time. So then they show up here and all of their tech affects us in some weird way, because it's basically, it's involving that. So then that's what I'm saying is, and like Seriah said, because we don't understand this, you can't rule anything out. But so you can imagine these scenarios where it could actually just be some kind of, technology from a race from some other star.
There have also been tons of accounts throughout history of people getting hit with a beam of light.
Yeah.
And it changes them.
Right.
Near-death experiences, people seem to experience that light and they come back changed. So what that light is, who knows, but it could be some form of tech.
That reminds me of like biblical stories where like the light shines down from heaven on somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And with near-death experiences, it's like, so why would there be tech when people are dead? Well, first of all, we don't know what happens when we die. We don't actually know that a near-death experience is the same thing we'll experience when we die, because we didn't, even if you're dead, you came back.
Yeah.
So, and it seems like you come back for a reason and it changes you. People usually, change their path in life. They tend to lean to be more spiritual than religious. They tend to actually get smarter, which is not what you expect when somebody has died.
Right.
Like they died. They should be losing brain cells, not come back smarter and with a more leveled out personality. It like improves them in every way, which suggests it's something that needed to happen to help this person.
Yeah.
As horrible as that may sound, because they had to die to get it. But it doesn't mean that that's what happens when we finally die. And a variety of things may happen when we finally die. And there may be tech in that. It just may not be technology like we think of it as material things.
Yes.
It may be an energy tech of some sorts.
That's right. And also it's completely possible that these phenomena are coming from a part of the universe that is just, it isn't abnormal. It's just that we don't have the senses to perceive it at all. So everything that happens from it seems very impossible to understand. You know, the whole, the flatland example where, where they can't possibly imagine what's happening when this three-dimensional shape moves through their plane of existence, because it changes impossibly, but it just
shows up and it disappears, and they don't know where it came from or where it went.
It gets bigger and smaller in weird ways as the thing is moving through their plane, right? So it's just it could just be a perception problem that other entities that also exist in the universe may not have, right? And so their tech may incorporate it all the time.
And they may perceive other things that we don't perceive. I mean, our brains are limiting machines. They're not. They're not computers like some people want to put out there. They're machines that limit the input we get, so that we can function in this reality, almost like an avatar in a video game.
Right. Yes. It's a dampening system for all the input.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it definitely does not. We've been able to tell, hey, there's all this other stuff we can't perceive, sounds,
light,
light, and all this stuff. And that's only the stuff we've been able to discover, that we've been able to make machines sensitive enough to pick up.
Yeah.
And then we create our scales and our, this is the light spectrum, but there could be stuff outside of that too that we just don't know to look for.
Right.
Or have any way to perceive.
Yeah.
Yes.
So an alien race might have a completely different interpretation of reality because they have completely different senses.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
right, Marty, your turn.
Yeah, what about you? Is it possibly that all of this is extremely ancient technology that's still here?
I had to make notes because there was so many good things that you guys said that I could riff off
Marty
of.
took
I had
notes
to
on me,
make
folks.
notes to not forget to address some points here.
Okay.
But first, I'm gonna answer your initial question with a question. You asked,
Trickster,
could this be technology that we're observing? And I'm going to ask you, do you believe it's possible that we are technology?
Like Adamu style? Like we're some
I'm talking
invention?
about mankind, all living things, all physical living things.
Yeah, where do you draw the line between technology and
natural?
Right.
Yeah, I'll entertain that possibility. Sure, not a problem.
Right. In other words, I think sometimes it's difficult to consider. Okay, I guess this is actually very similar to the way I was describing how civilizations have viewed the phenomenon through a lens that is at the limit of their conception of technology, right? And whether it's a boat or an airship or a flying saucer or whatever, right? You could apply that to this question. In other words, I guess, like, can a cow contemplate the universe? In other words, is it just, it's impossible. It's far beyond their ability to even formulate an opinion or an idea of the existence of something like that.
Can I interject? I have considered the idea that all life is an attempt by some intelligence to observe the universe.
Yeah,
Like, that's
like
sort-
from within it.
Yeah. Like let's go into this thing and like see what it's like in there and bring the data back.
Yeah.
Record the
Sure.
data.
And then that kind of goes into a sort of a Buddhist idea. But it could also be that the universe has been created so that we can create something new with it. You know, we've been given the tools. Now go make something new that doesn't exist.
Still an agenda from outside.
Could all of this, including us, be physical manifestations of that, just like the aports that we're talking about? These are a physical manifestation, a vessel for a non-physical intelligence. In this sense, in this application, our soul, whatever our
for
core
sure.
is this a technology that we can't see the forest from the trees? We don't even recognize that we are the machine.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just simply the container that this program or this whatever our core essence is, call it a soul, that this is placed in, and to allow us to experience a physical reality or something. In other words, when we talk about these things being from another planet or something, I think that may be that lens that we're looking through, that's at that limit of our understanding. There could be realities far beyond our ability to even consider, that there could be things bigger than the universe, that the universe is only a component of something larger, or a physical manifestation of a non-physical omnipresent thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that because there were a few different points that Seriah brought up that I think were really good points. Like the idea that psychics can, depending on solar activity, or that their abilities could change. Maybe, I guess the first before you could even consider that, I think you have to consider, and this is something that I'm going to be delving into more in upcoming episodes, but the first question that has to be considered is, do these psychics actually have these powers? Where is that knowledge coming from?
Well, I think that knowledge often comes from a connection to a greater thing than what we are.
Right.
I mean, I look at
exactly.
I like the video game sort of analogy. You know, you're playing a character in the video game. So your character in the video game, if it was conscious, would know only what's in the video game, but you know more. So occasionally, like, it would be like playing a video game where you could kind of like nudge its progress. Like, you can't control it exactly, but this conscious machine would be walking along and you'd be like, you should go to the right because you can see the view and that it can't. And you're going to go to the right. And it goes, I feel like I should go to the right, you know? And then it starts moving to the right. And a psychic would be someone who would be able to stop and sort of go, what is that card? And, you know, from your vantage point, you could turn the screen and go, that's a club, you know?
Yeah.
That's a great analogy, because that video game has to follow, or has constraints. Whatever,
Right.
However it was written, the program, the characters within that program have to follow the code that was written into that.
That was
Doesn't mean that you, as the observer, as the player, do. You have a completely different set of rules, and you can influence what's going on in the game, but it doesn't mean you necessarily are in control of all factors within the game.
Yes. Yeah.
You can,
The other thing I like about that analogy, though,
you can plant synchronicities to kind of steer them in directions that they
yes,
notice.
exactly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing I like about that analogy, though, is when you think about time, everything that can happen in that game is in that code. I mean, unless there's a glitch or a hole or something, but it's all right there. So if you're playing a game that's very linear, start to end, it's already there. You're just never seeing it like that when you're playing the game.
Right.
Yeah, the
So-
whole story
It's all been
exists.
written.
Yeah.
All the
Right.
code's been written.
Yeah.
Okay, you're getting dangerously close to a simulated universe, Seriah. So I just want, but I actually thought about this earlier with the airship thing and the anchor and the like common sort of manifestation by a bunch of people of something that relates to them. I mean, that really sounds like something that could
It sounds like
happen
a
in a
bug.
simulation.
It sounds like a bug
Yeah.
in the simulation.
And
yeah.
and then when I think about the advancement of physics, you know, I think we've talked about this, Seriah, before, where it's like when there was no need to render anything in deep space initially. When the players started building telescopes and looking deeper, the computer had to come up with like, okay, well, what are the rules out there? And so and it made a few mistakes, and now we have dark matter and dark energy and shit, and it's like, you know, and now we got to build a better instrument, and the computer has time to like make all the physics work
Except
out.
we don't have dark energy and dark matter. That's
You
the
know what
problem.
I'm talking about.
all right.
Have you guys ever heard of the electric?
But there's problems. It's there's problems, right?
I knew it.
What the hell are you talking about? But anyway, so simulation. Go. How could that play? Could that be what's going on? And is that sort of where you guys are going
certainly
with this?
could. Maybe not in the way that we think about it. But like I said, using a video game as an analogy actually works very well to describe our existence. The player, you know, a game that's very open world, but yet has a path to it, that you can construct new things out of it. If it's an advanced enough game, you can construct completely new things, not just things within the construct of the game.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like, oh, you can just put these two things together and get that. You could go, what if I do this and turn this way and then carve this a little bit and then turn, oh, I've created something new.
Yeah.
And if you get to a more energetic level, the gloves are off at that point. You could create whatever you want. These things that we experience as the paranormal might be a consciousness from outside our universe that's trying to communicate. Maybe they're in a whole other universe. And I'm not talking like a parallel dimension. I mean, like our universe is over here, theirs is over here, and somehow they're able to bridge to ours. They've discovered ours, and they're trying to, you know, find ways in to communicate with us. But when they come through, you know, you end up with crazy high strangeness stuff that looks like dream logic and stuff like that, because they're really connecting in through consciousness. And it's a deeper level of consciousness, the same deeper level that draws up dreams and stuff. So it doesn't always have to make logical sense.
Yeah. And their rules in their universe may be totally different.
Exactly.
Would cause it where they don't really understand what's going on over here either.
I mean, look how much trouble we have learning a language if there's not a bridge somewhere.
Yeah.
Now imagine that for a completely different form of life. Like you can sort of talk, you know, people have made those things with dogs where they can run around and hit the buttons to tell you what they want.
Yeah.
And they'll like, you know, speak different words and they can sort of put sentences together. But it takes a lot of work, and how, you know, we don't know that the dog really understands the sentence so much as the dog understands what he gets when he hits certain
Right.
buttons.
He understands the result. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to bridge that gap between two completely different things would take some kind of level of connection of consciousness.
I'm going to bring up an analogy that I've used before, and that I think that there is some historical data to support the possibility that this could be similar to what we might be experiencing, what our existence is. And I'll use a video game analogy because it's something I'm familiar with. I play, and I may have brought this up on the show at one point, but I don't remember. I know I have mentioned this to other people before, but and some of this comes from personal experience, I used to play car games, right? Like Gran Turismo, right? And in that game, the way I would play it is I'm doing laps, right? I'm trying to set the fastest lap time. And sometimes I'd start the game and you make a mistake early on in the game, you blow a turn, and you know there's no way you're going to beat your time, right?
Right.
So what do? Half the time you're like, screw it, you hit reset and you start again, right?
Yep.
Sometimes you go, well, shit, it was a small mistake. Maybe I can make up for it later. I'll try to, push a little harder into the next corner or something and make up for it. and I'm going to try not to make this a religious discussion, but we often hear arguments against, whoa, what's going on? Seriah's camera started moving around there.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Sometimes we hear statements like, how could God allow these terrible things to happen? This massive loss of life and things. And like, maybe those type of things are being interpreted from a human perspective, where maybe those type of things are effectively similar to hitting that reset button. Like our job here is to move on to the next level, right, in this game. Maybe the next level is a non-physical experience, right? Maybe we're in a physical state and our job is to get past that physical state into this next realm, right? And maybe these things that seem terrible from our level, from our perspective, from the macro, looking down on this situation, maybe they're not as bad as they seem. Maybe those people never really went away. Maybe the souls come back. Maybe right. That's where, the Egyptians' belief of, that your soul had to be as light as a feather to move on to the next realm. Maybe that is effectively what is going on here. And you're here and you've got guardrails, you've got guides, you've got Jiminy Cricket over here suggesting that you might not want to go left on that intersection. Maybe you need to go right. Yeah. You don't have to. We have free will, right? But it's always there to try to push us along. And maybe those mistakes, you can make up for them in some cases. Maybe sometimes you can't. Maybe right. You just have to get it right next time. But that, I kind of don't fall into the camp that this is some type of an intelligence that's studying this. We hear that a lot. Oh, they've been here and they're studying us and I don't buy that. I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest that they know us better than we know ourselves. They have the ability to manipulate us very easily. It doesn't seem like there's anything they don't know about us. So,
but they could know us better than we know ourselves and still be studying us, though.
Well, I would maybe categorize that as manipulating us for a purpose, not necessarily studying us, right? Well, yeah, let's see what. But
it could be us.
Let's see what happens if we put the cheese on the other side of the water. Will the rat swim across?
But going on what you're saying, like the idea of sort of down the reincarnation path, like it could be us on the other side. I've considered this you die and your soul disconnects from your body or whatever, and it is actually this sort of higher being, this higher self that has more awareness of like its reality, and this is an attempt to sort of like plug into this physical realm. Then it's like ourselves on the other side are observing ourselves on the inside, observing the universe and trying to do this stuff, and we're like, we're not getting it right, and we keep diving back in.
Game. Yeah,
exactly. And when you're in the game, you're the character, and it's really hard to keep the mindset of the guy that was out there seeing it as a macro thing.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I've shouted at my video game. I'm like, why did you do that? If I was in there, I would not have fallen off the cliff. Right? It's easy to not fall off cliffs. I've done it my whole life. But you fell off the cliff.
There's evidence that suggests that could be the case. In other words, there's data that could maybe suggest that it's possible that that's what's happening when you consider. Although because for shock value, maybe I will very often bring up cases that are maybe not don't turn out very well for the for the individuals involved.
Yeah.
There are cases where the phenomenon does appear, I wouldn't say appear, does have an interest in our well-being in some cases. And I know this for a fact, that it's not always negative. And it is hard to put that in a box and saying, okay, why would aliens from Zeta Reticuli care what happens to me? Right? Why would they intervene in some cases and not in others? What is going on? In other words, this is the I should point out that this is the aspect of the phenomenon that I believe, going back to the beginning of this entire conversation, this is the aspect of the phenomenon that the Department of Defense and I think governments in general are trying to distract us from.
Yeah.
They're over here pointing to the sky, going, look at those lights in the sky, and trying to get everybody to look up so they don't see what's going on around them. Because I've said this before, I know it sounds like a joke, but that Jiminy Cricket thing, I believe Jiminy Cricket is real. Whatever this is around us all the time, and it's influencing us all the time. And I'm going to say this: I'm not here to convince anybody of anything. This is my personal belief based on what I have seen, what I have personally experienced, as well as 40 years of research. This is what it looks like. I don't know what it is, but this is how it acts. That I can say there's data there, right? It's not enough to tell me what it is, but I can only speculate on what it could be, right? But as far as the conduct, that I'm fairly certain of.
And also, we learn, unfortunately, way more when we have bad experiences than good ones. When we're presented with a challenge, something to overcome, that's when we grow. That's when we learn to come up with new ideas and stuff, because obviously the old ones weren't working, or we've come up across a new problem. These experiences, I think, primarily are not negative experiences, but we've, especially with UFOs and stuff, it's been hijacked, where people are like, oh, abduction experiences are always negative. Well, they may start out negative, but so do shamanic experiences.
Yeah.
When someone starts a shamanic awakening, it's not a pleasant experience, but over time, you start to understand better what's happening, and it goes to be a more positive growth experience, which encounters with these things, I think, are on the same level. So it seems negative because it's scary. You know, you don't know what's going on. You seem to be up against something that wants to harm you. But when you really look at it, you're not seeing a lot of people get harmed by this stuff. Every once in a while, you have, especially in South America for some reason, like cases where people get exposed to lights and they die or get like radiation poisoning. But again, we don't know that that's actually the phenomena and not military operations.
Yeah, right.
Especially since it seems to center in that area, and we know our government definitely has used that area to test stuff and things like that. So who knows what's going on there? But overall, I think negative experiences, as much as they may suck, and none of us actually want them, we're going to get them. Life is a series of problems that we have to overcome, and the better you do with kind of overcoming those problems, the more you learn. And I think the phenomena is the same way. Like when you first experience it, it may be scary. It's a problem. But if you go to a UFO researcher who then hypnotizes you and gives you false recall of all these horrible things that they did to you, well, now it's an even scarier experience. And that potential growth experience has been hijacked because of this person's belief system who hypnotized you.
When you said that, I was thinking maybe they're trying to make a tasty dessert, and sometimes they burn some of the cookies.
I was going to say, it wouldn't be an infallible. Whatever it is not infallible, right? It can make mistakes.
No.
Yeah.
I think that there are historical records that indicate cases where this type of encounter has injured people.
And then they tried to fix it.
Could not be attributed to technology in terms of like a government, right?
Yeah.
It predates the modern era. We'll actually, I'm going to bring up a couple of cases in the next episode, actually, that I think are very interesting that counter that. And although I agree with Seriah, I think a lot of what we're seeing now is, or in the past 40, 50 years, a lot of it is definitely military stuff. But
But it's
again,
not to
that
say
doesn't mean we're not learning from these materials that have been recovered and everything. Or is it,
That's what I was going to say, that the military, like if you had all of the resources of the U.S. government at your fingertips, you probably would have like discovered to a certain degree some of the whatever the tech or the how these things are utilizing these other forces or whatever it is, and you pick up a little bit of that. So when you're testing it out, you make mistakes and
Well, two things I would say there. First of all, the military is basically only interested in weaponizing things. So they're not going to dig into anything they can't weaponize. If it looks like it's not going to be useful, they're just not going to bother. The other thing I wanted to say, though, is if this stuff draws our energy to manifest, because people will be like, well, why do people have negative like demon encounters and stuff like that? Why does this stuff seem demonic? If it's relying on our energy to manifest, and our energy that we're putting out there is fear and such and stress, then I think that's what it manifests with, and then it comes across as something frightening. And as long as that's the energy you're giving it, that's all it has to really work with. Even in some cases, you may be creating that yourself. You're externalizing that stress, that fear, and then it happens and it strengthens it. And if you stop looking at it as something trying to hurt you, you find like with poltergeist cases, when it seems like it's coming from a particular person, when that person's life levels out or they get people actually listening to them and stuff, the poltergeist activity trickles off, gets less negative, etc. It's the worst when they're at the most stress.
Yes. I have a bunch. I have a bunch of
agree with
questions,
that.
but we need
Me
to take
too.
a break. Yeah. One more break here, or another break.
Right.
We'll be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen, Brothers of the Serpent podcast, and we're having a roundtable discussion with Marty and Seriah from Where Did the Road Go on the topic of UFOs, paranormal phenomena, and what all this might be and what it all might mean. Also, Colin, I got some beers. Cheers, buddy.
cheers, bro. Hair of the dog.
Cheers to you guys.
I have a caffeine-free Diet Pepsi. Does that count?
Yeah, it totally counts.
What?
Yeah, sure, it counts. Drink a choice.
He's going
man.
easy on you, bro.
I wanted to throw out one other thing based on the conversation we were having last time. When it comes to the idea of like the universe and all that, in reading the Seth material, Seth describes our universe as a portion of what he calls all that is. And he's like, we are a tiny, tiny sliver. This universe is a tiny, tiny sliver of all that is. So he uses all that is instead of God because we're made up of everything. We're all a part of the same all that is. And then he goes on to say that the all that is looking for others like itself.
Okay.
And like that's kind of a mind-blowing concept when you consider like our universe as huge as it is, it's just a sliver in this totality of this thing.
Yeah.
Which is trying to find other things that are like itself.
Yeah, that is.
Talk about like a cosmic horror type of scale.
Yeah,
It's like the whole thing is like, am I alone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Let me make some little friends down here.
Yeah.
I don't like them die.
that I would say that's not altogether different than what might be suggested in the Nag Hammadi text as well. Jesus speaking of all that is, it's kind of I would say it's somewhat similar.
Interesting.
Well, I did want to real quick reference something we were talking at the end of the last segment there, which is, Seriah, you were mentioning how people have bad experiences, but that could be because it's what they're giving in the co-creation part, right?
Right.
But I wanted to ask, do you think that it's possible that there is actually just purely what we would call maybe evil stuff coming from this phenomena as well? Is the phenomena varied in its within itself?
I think there's different aspects to it, certainly, but I don't think I think it's perspective. I think if something is trying to feed on you, we'll see it as evil, but it doesn't necessarily consider itself evil. It's just hungry.
Like our mosquitoes evil.
Right.
Hell
exactly.
Yes.
They are.
Is the answer.
The cat is this cute, adorable thing to us, but
Also
an
evil.
absolute evil horror to the mouse.
Right. Cats are definitely evil as well. They've always been witches familiars. Come on.
They're masters of deception, dude.
They are masters of
Yeah. That's right.
Go ahead, pet me. Ha, gotcha.
we have discussed that on the show before, that question, and I think it's probably better characterized as malevolent rather than evil.
Yeah.
I think Seriah is exactly right. Evil is in the eye of the beholder. In other words, it depends on what side of the table you're on.
Yeah.
Malevolent, on the other hand, I think that there is evidence, there are many cases that suggest that the phenomenon has ill or negative negative ramifications, intentional ramifications on mankind.
I mean, this is kind of maybe silly, but it's like, could it be the adolescence of whatever those beings are? Because I was just thinking about malevolence and how a child can just go destroy something.
Yeah.
Because it's not really malevolence, but they are destructive and they're just not really aware.
We're also probably dealing with an entire ecosystem of things.
That's what I mean.
I don't think it's one thing.
Yeah.
It could be. It could all be one thing with different faces. Paul Kimball postulated the idea of this thing is creating art in our world, and it creates art by creating these paranormal manifestations, and it's just one thing with all these different faces. But it's also very possible it's an entire ecosystem of different things that manifest in using similar means. So some of them might just be jerks.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about, is that the phenomena itself is not just, purely good. Some of it is.
Right. No.
In other words,
I think we are dealing with, at least at a bare minimum, two opposing forces appear to be at odds with, in terms of the direction. I mean, and this could be parsed out in different ways. In other words, it could be territorial, it could be for control, it could be, in other words, it doesn't, I know that when I say that, you automatically think, angels and demons, and it's necessarily from a religious, context, but that's not necessarily the case. I mean, there are nations here in our reality have, opposing objectives. And
sure.
So that could be what it's all about. It could be territorial. I mean, we don't know. Right. But the evidence suggests that there appears to be different agendas at play, but they still seem to have to follow the same rules.
The demon code.
I hate to put it that way. I try not to put a religious, but
I think,
facade over it.
We've talked about this before, and that it's very possible that these traditions that have come about and turned into these religious practices are initiated by some type of similar, experience of contact or something like that. It seems pretty clear in a lot of, especially in the Christian tradition, that there's contact going on, which starts all this stuff. So I think a religious connotation is not, that just may be the origin of religions.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no doubt, absolutely. Nearly every religion has started as a result of some form of contact, and I wouldn't say necessarily Christian either, because in regard to what you just said, because, for example, the Book of Enoch greatly predates Christianity.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So my working model is that there is some level of truth, like maybe that's their best understanding of what was going on. Well, on the balance, when you look at all these repetitive stories, that there is consistency, different players, but the underlying story appears to repeat itself.
Yeah.
And I think that's suggestive of some underlying truth there. It may not be exactly as it's, because it's like the telephone game, and there may be parts that have been manipulated or misinterpreted in certain ways, but I think the underlying part of it is the same.
We also like, as people, to minimalize things. We want to make them simpler.
Yeah.
And this might be something that's very, very, very complex beyond our ability to comprehend.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that ecosystem that you mentioned, Seriah, is also kind of, I made an analogy in one of the previous episodes, and it connected. It was kind of the, I guess, based on the custodian model, that there are these different beings or intelligences that are working behind the scenes, but that relates very much to the chain of being, where there is a hierarchy of these intelligences, and they all serve different purposes. So their methods of interaction may appear to us as though they have completely different objectives, right? But that's strictly a function of their doing their job, or their whatever they were designed for, if they were created, or if they're a technology.
That's
right?
a really interesting aspect of it too, because it the way it's set up, it sometimes makes it seem like, well, this is just a government, and these are, but then in other ways, it's like, no, they're actually, like, they can't do certain things. Like it's an actual physics type of thing where they just are governed by natural laws, where they are only able to do certain things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I was just thinking that it ties into, in some ways, how we've discussed many times the possibility that the gods of many ancient civilizations are actually describing physical aspects of the universe, right? They're personifying certain like laws of the universe, or just the way that it acts. But then you can actually take that around and say, well, but it's possible from an animistic or panpsychist view that those laws of the universe do have personalities.
Right. Yeah. And then also, when you look at it as a form of government, they actually say, like, they brought kingship down from heaven, and so this is how our systems of civilization are arranged.
Yep.
And it's almost like mirroring these maybe natural forces that they deal with. I don't know. It's weird.
But that would also, if it is that it's like, these are, that in some way the way that the forces of the universe actually have personalities, then that would explain in some ways why they can't act in certain ways, because they are also these forces of the universe. Like, they can only do certain things in certain ways. But you could take that as you could say that, if you're taking the perspective that the entire universe and all aspects of it are actually, it stems from consciousness, and therefore all of it is conscious in some way. That the phenomena is like a result of that, a result of parts of the universe that have consciousness, and that's why it affects our consciousness as well when we interact.
Because we're
with
like pieces of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That brings up. Oh, go ahead, Seriah.
I was just going to say the hierarchy thing. Like when you say kingship came down from the heavens, that also could just be an advanced civilization teaching a lesser one their ways, as opposed to something more cosmic.
For sure, that could have been just like they flew over here and like taught us forms of government.
And appointed an emissary, and that's the king. Yeah.
And to Russ's point on how they appears to have to follow rules, that reminds me, for example, of the Lesser Keys of Solomon, how Solomon was able to bind the demons.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
And they had to answer. They had to give their name. They couldn't. In other words, in theory, you're going, why, if these are these powerful beings, why do they have to do things? They were bound, which is not unlike exactly what Enoch said happened to the not the demons, but the fallen angels, because they're not. I know that was a point that I tried to stress in one of the previous episodes, that the fallen angels are not demons. The demons were the offspring of the fallen angels.
Yeah.
The Nephilim, the Gibberim, and the what's the other? The Nephilim, the Gibberim, and the Elgos. Those were the demons, and they were bound. And then the spirits of these, the Nephilim, the Elgos, are the ones that were then effectively haunting the people that survived the flood.
Yeah.
So that brought up let me bring up just an observation related to the Lesser Keys of Solomon that I think might have application in this. This is something, because in this series, I try to bring up a lot of the historical aspects in terms of like lore, these different beings like Inanna and Ishtar, those, we see they're like archetypes, right? They're different. These are different, appear to be different in different intelligences. I don't know what they are, whatever they are. They go by different names. Different cultures have a different name for them, but they act exactly the same, and the stories behind them are almost exactly the same.
Yeah.
Right? And we assume that, well, these are just, each culture is putting their name on this thing, but it's the same story. But what if it's not? What if they recognized long ago that the intelligences behind this have the ability to manifest under different guises, but they act the same? And since you can't use a name, like, because it appears or calls itself something, one name here, uses a completely name there, all right, but it conducts itself the same. Did they create the sigils to represent that intelligence, whatever that demon is, whatever that being or that intelligence is, regardless of its facade or its manifestation? This sigil represents this particular being.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about that, Seriah?
I hadn't really thought about it that way. Because I figure a lot of the stories that get told from old are probably more symbolic. But that's entirely possible if you're dealing with a real entity.
Yeah, and I was thinking that, if it's correct that the true names of these things being known to someone actually gives that person power over it somehow.
It does. Names have power. They absolutely do.
So then if that's true, then it makes sense why a very powerful entity like that would not ever give out its name and then just let the culture name it instead.
Right.
And so you see the same entity acting all over the world across multiple cultures, but each culture has its own name for them, but you can recognize the same entity through its actions, through its method of dealing with people. But nobody knows that, and that's why they all have different names, is because the thing never gives out its true name, because somehow that results in a lowly human having power over it in some way.
And it's interesting that some of the monotheistic religions are like, don't use the name of God.
Yeah.
That's
or what is
against
the
the
true name
rules,
of
yeah,
God?
like-
Yeah. Like let's
You'll never even be able to contemplate it. Don't ever say it. Don't
Spend our
even
entire
try.
lives trying to determine the true name of God. Yeah. Exactly.
Is it the Brahmic tradition that says that God uttered a word, that word was the Aum,
Yeah.
and that is the entire that's all of creation right there in that vibration, and everything that has been created was created from that vibration.
Not much different than Big Bang Theory.
Or the in the beginning there was the Word.
Yeah.
And the Word was God.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I mean, if there are connections to this idea of a single word or a name.
And I'm serious about Big Bang because it's like there's basically nothing happening, and then suddenly there's a vibration, and then it's
Let there be.
But it's
light.
not vibration. It's more of a singularity unable to contain itself, and so it explodes.
that explosion is the word.
And the vibration.
It's the first like energy that comes out.
It's definitely the modern day science's creation story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example of this, how I say the different names, but the same conduct, and how this could tie in with the modern UFO lore. I mentioned Lilith, who was also known as the Screech Owl, right? And then you have Lilitu, and Nana, Ishtar. All of these were referred to as the stealer of children. Then jump forward to today, and you have in the abduction phenomenon, you have women who claim that their fetuses were taken.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So again, is this the same phenomenon under different guises?
No, and it's likely. It's likely to be misidentified in both cases, but the same source.
Right. It merely puts on a facade that is, again, it's right at that limit of the understanding of the civilization at that time.
And Joshua Cutchin's book deals quite well with that whole idea of stealing children and changelings and stuff like that. I can't remember the name of the book though. It's the obvious one if you go look at Joshua's books.
And then we have the whole 411 stuff. How many children go missing each year?
Yeah, but the more we've looked at the missing 411 stuff, and I've done a few shows with you guys on it. I mean, there's a lot of cases there that are just prosaic explanations.
Sure.
Like the last,
different than the UFO phenomenon.
Yeah.
Right.
95% of it is prosaic stuff.
And that's what I expected the very first time I talked to David. I said, most of these are going to be prosaic, but there's a handful here that are interesting. But I feel like children.
Are you talking about? Okay, it's not Trojan Feast, right? Are you talking about Thieves in the Night?
Thieves in the Night. Yes.
Yeah. Joshua Cutchin.
Like with children. Like one of the interesting cases we covered a while ago was I think his name was Casey Cunningham, where he wandered off into the forest. So him missing wasn't so much the thing, because kids wander off. They run off. Parents aren't always watching. So that kid's missing is kind of like I can understand how that happens. The weird part of that case was that he was found alive like 2 days later after it was below freezing.
Yeah.
And he was kept alive by a bear.
Right. That's right.
And it's like, that's not a thing.
No.
So what really happened to this kid that he interpreted as a bear keeping him alive? Because he shouldn't have been able to survive. He should have died of hypothermia.
Right. And there's quite a few stories like that in those books where the kids go missing, and then the weather is horrible, and they're found way later, and they seem to have been fed and taken care of. In some cases, they're not even wet if it was raining. But like Seriah said, a lot of the cases probably have normal explanations, but some of them are just extraordinary.
The one that jumps out at me that I remember is David Paulides talking about the child that went missing for several days, and same kind of situation. And when she was found, and they asked her, where were you? And she said that it was where she was. It was always daylight, and that she remembered seeing the little cows.
Yeah.
Yes.
Little cows. Like, well, if you were up in the air, cows would look little.
Yeah.
Or she was in a dimension that had small cows.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no telling. I mean, the phenomenon has the ability to
Can
manifest
little
itself
cows contemplate the universe? That's the question we have to ask.
We don't want to live in that dimension. The stakes are too small.
Yeah, you got to wonder if other creatures, how they contemplate the universe, if at all, or if they just exist. They're just moment to moment. Or do any of them think of the bigger picture? Do dolphins think of the bigger picture? Do octopi, who seem to be very, very smart, think of the bigger picture?
Yeah.
Or are they connected into it in a way that we don't understand that allows them to just be without having to worry about it?
Yeah, they don't have to contemplate because they know or they are.
Have you read the story? Have you read Reality Denied?
Nope.
I don't think so.
By Colonel John Alexander.
No.
He tells a story, and my daughter's a dolphin trainer, so this is why this story jumps out at me. But he tells a story about a dolphin trainer that had some type of an anomalous connection with these dolphins, and Colonel John Alexander actually went out and they conducted some tests, and I haven't read this story in a very long time, so I may get certain details wrong, but it's very similar to the remote viewing experiments. They put the dolphin in an enclosure and had this trainer stand there. They created, I believe it was 7 or 10 set of instructions. They put them in an envelope.
7 sets of instructions.
At random, they would hand the envelope to the trainer. She was not allowed to open the envelope. And then the dolphin would run through the series of actions that were written on these sheets, even though the trainer herself didn't read it. So it's not like she could be telling the dolphin what to do, instructing it. Somehow there was some it's very similar again to remote viewing. The dolphin would go through this series of actions, and then afterwards they would say, "Yeah, I was right. That's exactly what was on this paper." And they went through however many it was, and on the last one, the dolphin got through the whole thing, and the very last thing on the sheet, it didn't do. And they were like, "That's weird." It was like, got it perfect. It did everything it was supposed to do. And then but it didn't do this. Why? The dolphin is sitting there doing this, signaling them. And they're like, what? They didn't understand it. Above this tank, they had put the dolphin in. There was a mesh, a screen over the top of the tank. And the instruction was for the dolphin to jump out of the water. And the dolphin was telling him that if it jumped, it was going to hit the screen.
Wow.
Well, and when you deal with psychic stuff with animals, you have Rupert Sheldrake's research.
Yep.
That showed that dogs would know when their owners were coming home, even when it wasn't on a pattern or a regular time or anything like that. So, I mean, it may just be a natural thing for these animals.
Yeah, and the question is the dolphin reading someone else's mind, or is there some kind of precognition on the part of the trainer, where because she reads the instructions later, so then you got this,
psychic connection going backwards in time.
Yeah, you've got retrocausality.
It could be from the SRI study stuff. Their running theory was that they were tapping into future knowledge.
Yeah. So it's precognition of some kind. Yeah. Mm. But
the fact that she was gonna read the instructions was how.
Right. If they never showed her the instructions, the dolphin may not have been able to do the exercises.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, most of the people that were doing remote viewing were way more accurate if they got the info later.
Yes, that's right.
Than if they weren't told if they were correct or not.
Right. That's right.
Which suggests that they're able to pull that information from the future.
Yeah. Or there's some future state of their mind that they're able to connect to in some way. It's just weird. Yeah.
Eric Wargo, when he did his book Time Loops, he talks about how often when people have precognitive dreams, when they dream about the very thing that's happening, they will dream like the example. One of the interesting examples he gave, like this volcano went off and killed like 100,000 people or 10,000 people. And the newspaper article got the number wrong. In his dream, he didn't witness the volcano going off, but like 2 days earlier, he has this dream that this volcano goes off and kills 100,000 people, which is what it said in the news article. And then it turns out it only killed 10,000, but he found out it from the news article. So, Eric's suggestion here is he's picking up that information from the future because he's seeing the article. He's not seeing the volcano explode. And he gives a lot of examples like that. Yeah. Where you're looking at something where it seems like they're just picking up the knowledge of when they discover the event. It's not precognitive information about the event, like the event itself, but their discovery of the event. Yeah, it's not, what they're picking up.
It's not information about the world. It's information about their future state of mind.
Their future understanding.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Man. And the more traumatic something is, the more likely it is to project backwards in time.
If we ever do have any precognition, folks, it's just don't trust it because we're like 99% wrong about everything.
That's right. Anyway. We're almost always wrong.
So it's like our future state of mind is going to be wrong.
We knew we were going to be wrong.
I was totally right about how wrong I was going to be. But I have a kind of something like that, and maybe it doesn't count. It's in my lyrics. Like I write a lot of lyrics. I have books full of lyrics, and it could be just a product of the way I write because I use a lot of metaphor. I write sort of in an ambiguous way, but to me, the patterns are there. Like I have ways of representing things that's pretty consistent, I think, for myself. But past lyrics, many years old, like a decade old, I'll listen to a song or I'll read some lyrics, and it's like it applies sometimes eerily so perfectly to like what's going on in the current state.
I don't think there's a huge difference from what we dip into to be creative from psychic stuff. I think we're digging into that sort of unconscious part of ourselves.
Yeah, I would not argue with that. I feel like sometimes when I get into a state, like there's like a muse or something. I don't know. It's eerie, and sometimes it happens more often than not. And now is one of those times. Like I'm just in this period right now where like I'm working on this set of songs, and so many of these old ones that I'm going back through and trying to pull up and work on. I'm just like, oh my God, like this is really weird. So I don't know, but it is, they're not cut and dry. So there's,
right. Oh yeah.
Prophecy never is cut and dry.
Oh, okay.
It's always given as a riddle.
Reality isn't cut and dry.
Right.
Come on.
Right. That's right. Yeah, that's true.
I was going to make this terrible joke.
I mentioned earlier, the other argument is, where is that information coming from? Is that information being provided to you? Are you tapping in to your own knowledge, or are you tapping into some exterior knowledge?
I can say
so
that.
You're going back to your question you asked in the first segment, which was like, do these psychic people actually have powers, or is something else happening? Is that what you're talking about? Like, in other words, it isn't necessarily that you're another
one of my little. I'm seeding something for the future.
Yeah, it's like you're not
something we're going to be bringing up in future episodes that I might possibly present some examples of how this information may have been coming from an external source.
Right. So you're not precognitive. It's actually something else is feeding you the information for this particular time.
This is a working analogy. This is not fully developed, so it's flawed, but I think you'll get where I'm going with this. Okay. And I don't know the exact numbers. I will when we get further into this, but we process our reality. We see things at a certain frame rate, right? Like our brain can perceive our now in a certain number of frames. And you'll hear stories about people that will get in a life-threatening situation. They get in a car accident or something, and your brain releases a chemical that doubles that frame rate. Now your now is broader. It allows time to slow down. It's like a mechanism, a defense mechanism that somehow we developed that allows you to process your surroundings, that you might be able to save yourself from this situation, right? So it's as though time is malleable.
Oh yeah.
In our process, our ability to process, right? So this is our normal now, and this is our, I'm looking at the camera, this is our, our emergency now, right? What if there's an intelligence that we don't recognize is influencing us, but what if its now is much broader?
Oh, sure.
Things that we perceive as future, it's perceiving as now. It's not that it's precognitive. It's just its perception of time is different than ours.
It can look at the code of the game and see all the possibilities.
Yeah. That may be a factor in this, and you'll understand why I say that in future. And with some of the stories that we'll be talking about in the future, there are cases where that's kind of seems like the most prosaic explanation for how certain information could have been known in advance.
And I think there's more than one thing going on, like with any of this stuff. I mean, some of it may just be you're picking up future information from yourself, emotional stuff that's being presented backwards in time. And then, I mean, I've had precognitive stuff that's not like precognitive dreams, like I've been given specific information in dreams. And the largest gap at this point was 6 years. So that's totally outside of what Eric Wargo was saying. And I'm given very specific information from what seems like a very specific entity. So it's not just, I dreamed about a thing that was going to happen to me. No, that thing that I dreamed about wasn't, even though it was couched in like dream stuff, none of that actually happened, but all the information laid out. And over the years, I've learned to pick out which information is important when I have those dreams, because they feel different, but they usually have normal dream stuff mixed in. So like something's communicating through and being like, okay, these are the things you need to look for.
The gates of horn and ivory, boy.
I can completely relate with that statement.
So I think that stuff comes from an outside intelligence or a part of myself that is so different that I don't recognize it as myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Well, all right,
I would say that in my personal experience, it would be hard for me to accept that it was my knowledge, my future knowledge. It's hard. Without getting into any sort of details or anything, it's complicated. It's possible, but it seems unlikely. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. So it could be
again, we don't know. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
We can speculate, but there's no way to know for sure.
Right. And bottom line, I mean, regardless of what it is, whether we're tapping into our own future knowledge, whether we're tapping into, morphic resonance or, whatever it is, the thing is that this is a part of human experience. It's not, I don't think it's nearly as unusual as people try to make it out to be. I think virtually everybody experiences it. Now, whether they admit it to themselves or they recognize it or acknowledge it,
or their brain just filters it out completely.
Right. But I think this is part of the human experience. I think we could potentially interact with this thing on a continual basis.
Yeah. There's been a number of experiences in my life where me and I was with two other people, and one of them experienced the same thing I did and the third person did not. And to me, that's either that this phenomena can very much pick who it wants to interact with, or that third person's brain just filtered that out as not important. The weird thing is, like in my brain, because I'm lucky I took notes, because there's one guy I hung out with a lot, and a lot of weird stuff happened when I was around him. And one of the weird experiences I have, he was the one that didn't see it. And the other person I was with that nothing weird ever happened with was the one who saw it. So then you go, why? Why?
That's
Why
because
did
you were
that
there, man. You,
lay
That's
out
why
like that? My
you're the
brain
wild
wanted
card.
to-
Yeah, it's your fault, bro.
It's your fault. You were there. You're the wild card. You and your Kundalini stuff have just like messed everything up.
But it's like why, in my brain, I actually had switched them because it made more logical sense to me because, this guy experienced other stuff when he was around me and this guy never had. So that must have been how it is. And then I look at my notes and I'm like, I had everything exactly right, except I switched them.
Yeah, and we've talked about on the show before. I've given examples of experiences, more specifically UFO sightings, but that you'll have multiple individuals side by side that have this encounter, and then their descriptions are entirely different.
Yeah.
Yes.
Their perceptions of time, what they observed, almost every aspect of it are completely different. So, there had to be some stimulus there, right? They're not imagining this, but they're perceiving it in different ways. And is that a inability to process this experience,
Properly,
or is it a purposeful manipulation of their perception?
Yeah.
So years ago, there was an incident with a Google blimp that went off course or did something weird, and it generated a ton of UFO reports. And all the UFO reports described it exactly the same way.
Yeah.
And the two things there that stuck out to me is, okay, so average people are actually good observers. They did not know it was a blimp. They didn't know what it was. So when people are experiencing the same thing and they're reporting different effects, it's because they're perceiving it differently.
Yeah.
Because when it's a real life object and they all saw this blimp, they all described it exactly the same way.
That's right.
Yeah, I think
hold on.
that kind of lends to that. The skeptics' arguments have always been that. Well, why are they always described differently? And they use all these things. And like, no, you're actually making a good observation. It's not that they're making this up, or that they're not. They were mistaken by what. No, that is evidence in itself that it has the ability to appear differently to different people. It can appear, like you said, to one person, and the person standing next to him doesn't see it.
Yeah,
there are many examples of that.
Yeah.
When Jeremy Vaney was on the show recently, he was talking about how him and Jeff Rutzman. Are you trying to say something?
We're trying to. Yeah, you guys are abducting the show. We're trying
excellent.
to.
Isn't that what you wanted?
We're going long. We're gonna take a break and we'll come back and let's keep this going. This is great.
Okay. All right.
Great.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. The final segment of this episode of Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Going long. Sorry we had to interrupt you there, but Seriah, you were telling a story. I don't remember what it was about, but let's hear it.
I think it was the last time Jeremy was on my show, Jeremy Vaney, who used to do Paratopia with Jeff Ritzman. We were discussing this incident they had where there was a light on the ground. I think he said it was at a bus stop. I could be wrong about the location, but only one of them could see it. And it was like just this pinpoint of light that was like out a little ways away from them. And I don't know if Jeremy saw it or Jeff saw it, but the other one didn't see it until he moved into the exact same spot, and then it became visible, which a point of light should not do. I mean, why the point light is there, that's odd enough on its own, but to only be seen from a very specific angle.
It was coming through a tube.
A tube into another dimension.
Yeah. But I mean, that's what it makes me think of. Like if you have a long tube and there's a point source in the very back of it, and you're looking through it. You can only see it from a very specific angle, right?
Yeah. Tim Renner, when he was walking through Site 7 once with someone who was apparently very skeptical of the lights they would see out there, which would be typical little lights, suddenly had this ball of light appear in front of him. And he was just like freaking out. Apparently the thing looked like the size of a large softball to him, and everyone else just saw a point of light.
Can you give a brief explanation of Site 7 real quick?
Site 7 is just one of the odd locations in southern Pennsylvania that Tim Renner's recorded a bunch of weird phenomena at, mostly weird lights that will flicker around. I've been there a couple of times. We got minimal stuff, but I did see a few quick lights. I've seen, it hasn't ever been super active in the few times I've been there. But he has gone through it enough where other people have seen things with him numerous times.
Yeah, I'd love to go check.
Yeah, we have a place here, Marfa.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, that's a much bigger type of light manifestation.
Yeah. I know people have been there and seen the lights, and they've told us, like, you guys got to go. You got to go.
Didn't Brad? I think Brad saw something.
Brad went.
We were going to the meetup.
And we have.
I mean that almost seems like a natural sort of manifestation, except that they seem to show some rudimentary consciousness, which then brings you into the category of plasma consciousness possibilities.
Yeah.
That viewing angle that you mentioned, that reminded, I was trying to connect dots here. Like, that reminded me a little bit of the aerial encounter, the aerial school encounter. If you watch, I don't know if you've seen the documentary, but
not yet.
They interview a few of the kids that were there, and they talk about what they experienced, and they have drawings that they made at the time, and it's a pretty impressive documentary. And but they do mention that what they saw was a little bit, it appears to suggest that what they saw was influenced by where they were positioned. Because one or two of the individuals involved, the children that were there, described seeing where. Let me start. The ones in the middle said, they saw a craft that appeared to have like a walkway, and there was a being standing on the walkway. There was another one that approached them, and they have descriptions of what they appeared like and their eyes and the whole 9 yards. But like one girl in particular that was off to the side said that what she saw looked like a rock. It looked like a big stone. It didn't look like a craft. And there was a being, besides the being that approached, there was another being off to the side. And this being appeared to be running away, but
that's right. Yeah.
Looked strange, like it was running in a jiggity, like it was like
it was jerky,
pixelated or slow frame rate or something.
Yep.
And it would get to a certain point, and it would disappear, and it would start at the beginning. It was like in a loop.
Yeah.
So, things like that, like, is this a psyop or something? Or is this...
Or is it something punching into our reality?
Right. Is it, right. It's coming in, and you're looking through this, wormhole or something, and you can only see it from a certain angle. I don't know. But this is not unusual. In other words, these type of descriptions that appear different based on the viewing angle, that could play into why maybe some of these multiple witness descriptions
see different
appear to be different. Right.
I also wonder if it's about picking up extra information that we don't realize. Tim was out at Gettysburg Bridge that's supposed to be haunted and stuff, even though no one's ever actually died on the bridge. But Gettysburg is just a very energetic place anyway. And they said they were on the bridge and there was a lot of activity. And when they went to leave, the bridge made a sound like someone dropped a safe on it. Like it's just this loud gunshot, loud kabang. But on their recorders, it's just like a knock. And I said, well, what if what you heard was amplified by other senses, other parts of your senses you don't realize amplified it? You know, that was actually the sound, was just that little knock, but your senses knew there was more behind that, so that emphasized it more and made it much louder for you because, hey, there's more information here.
You weren't perceiving it through your ears.
Right.
You're perceiving it in your brain.
Yeah. You perceived the knock, but then the knock was amplified.
Yeah. And we know, even just from prosaic experiences, that perception can be greatly affected by relative position, right?
Yes.
By where you are. You know, there's plenty of examples, even with sounds, like you're saying. Like, you know, if you hear something and it's very close to your ear, it can sound really loud. When somebody who's a couple of feet away, they hear a little pop, right? You're like, wow, that was like incredibly loud. No, it was just a little pop, right? But it's just right next to your ear. Or if you're standing on in the middle of a very large structure, you only see parts of it, but somebody on the outside can conceive of it as a single large. Right. You know, so if you're inside of a massive building, all you see are the four walls and the ceiling and the floor, but somebody outside can see that it's got 12 floors and all this stuff. So there's plenty of ways that perception can and positioning.
I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but when we were in the Great Pyramid that night, I came out. I was with a couple of the other guys. We were walking out. We were in the chain or in the passage going out, and you guys were further in. And I don't remember, it was you, Russ, or someone were stomping their feet inside.
Yeah.
It sounded to us like a cannon going off. Yeah.
That's why we were doing it. It was crazy. Yeah.
It was so loud. I tried to get my camera to get it on video.
And it was like,
holy cow.
I mean, it was like down there. It was like maybe 20 hertz. I mean, it was super low.
It's very low. And you stomp and just boom. And then it goes up up the descending passage like a cannon
quite
shot.
An experience.
Yeah. And when you're standing inside that thing, it's just crazy.
And then we all got scared. We had more people were stomping, and then we were like, "Stop!
Stop!
Let's not do that anymore."
Well, at least you know it's not going to come down on you.
Yeah, but I mean, even the pyramid is a great example. Like you can walk around in all those passages and chambers on the inside, and if you didn't know what the exterior shape of it was, you'd have no way of discerning. Of discerning the exterior structure from what you're doing on the inside of that thing, you know. And it's the same way when you're standing outside looking at it. It's also one of those things where it's so enormous that even standing next to it, you are aware that it's incomprehensibly large, right?
Yeah.
So it just kind of messes with your perception. Then you try to get close to it to look up at it, but it's so big that it actually occults itself, and you can't see enough of it anymore when you get close. So that's
one of the problems with a lot of like the giant triangle sightings and all, is that people in aviation will say that people will very often overestimate the size of aircraft because they cannot. There's no way to triangulate that and to be able to discern how high is this object. Is it close to me and huge, or is it far up? You know, so that can play into your perception. It's not just visual, it's also your interpretation of what you're seeing.
Right.
Yes.
You have to be aware already of the basic concept of the structure to be able to comprehend what it is up in the sky when there's no other frame of reference for it.
Right. Because the context is usually, your frame of reference is not just distances. Your frame of reference is your own personal experience.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
When you're seeing something, you go, "Oh, that's a airliner. I know airliners are big."
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you're seeing something that it's something completely new, you've never seen anything like it.
Yeah,
you have no way of knowing whether it's close or far.
Right. You have no way of judging scale because you don't know what you're looking at. Yeah. Another one I always think of is, the science fiction series written by Larry Niven, the Ringworld series, is the inhabitants on the ring. The ring world itself is a huge ring that goes all the way around its star in about the orbit of Earth. Right. So it's enormous, a massively enormous structure. And all the people live on the inside of the ring, the side that faces the star. But the people on the ring, they've forgotten what it is. They've been there for hundreds of thousands of years, and they no longer remember that they're on a ring. So they think that there's an arch. They see a big flat landscape, and they think that way out at the end of it is an arch that goes over the sun, because that's what it looks like to them, right? From their perspective, the ring that's curving up over the sun looks like a big arch going over the star, right? So it's about perspective. It's like, and especially very large structures that you don't know about, they can really trick your brain.
Well, the one UFO sighting I had over Cayuga Lake, when I first saw it, it was huge, and it was up where there was no reference point. I mean, it was dark.
Yeah.
There were lots of lights on it. The thing was blinding, yet I could still look at it after a moment. And I wasn't able to determine the size until it started dropping down into the lake.
Oh.
And then it went behind the trees, and I went, oh, that's really big.
It's really big.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like really, really big.
Yeah. Once the trees are in the frame of reference, then you can be, yes. Yeah. Exactly.
When the trees are tiny and they're big trees, and the thing's going behind it, and it's like enormous along those, it's like, okay, whatever I'm looking at, even if it's just lights, those lights are huge.
Right.
Was this part of the Hudson Valley sightings?
No, I'm in the middle of the state. Hudson Valley's down toward New York City. This was just a one-off.
When would this have been?
June 2001. And as far as I know, no one else reported it. It was also 11:30 at night, so.
What did the object look like?
It didn't. It was all lights. Initially thought it was a car coming up from the lake with high beams on because it was blinding me. And when I finally was like, why isn't it stopping blinding me? I looked through it and I'm like, what the fuck am I looking at? And there were lights on top and bottom. And then there were lights moving around it that were multicolored, like green, red, blue type lights. And they'd stop at a certain point and then come back. So it almost looked like it was saying wrapping around. But I realized I couldn't see if it was actually wrapping around something, but it was like a Pac-Man effect. Like it would get to the end and they were all going in one direction. But I'm like, going, I can't see anything behind it, but it's also up in the air. So I wouldn't expect to see, even if it was just lights, those lights are washing everything out.
Yeah.
I couldn't see an actual structure. It made absolutely no noise and was just unbelievably bright, but not lighting everything up either. That was the other thing.
Oh. Yeah, because you would expect something that bright would light up the landscape around it, right?
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
And it hit right at, I didn't think about this at the time because it wasn't something I looked for. Luckily, I kept notes on all this stuff, but it happened at a very liminal time in my life when a lot of things were changing. I think I had told Mike Clellan the story, and he went, what was going on in your life at the time? And I'm like, I have no idea. And I went back and looked and went, holy crap, a lot.
Yeah. Wow.
Because there's a connection there between liminality and the paranormal.
Right. Does that energy state that you're in, is that conducive to this type of experience?
Yeah. And one of you brought up crop circles when we were in break.
Yep.
And so the interesting thing about crop circles, they initially, the guys who took credit for it back in the 80s, 90s, whenever it was.
Doug and Dave?
Yeah, who said they were somehow getting all over the country and making crop circles overnight.
Yeah.
Which logistically didn't even work. But when they were asked how they came up with them, they said, we had them in Australia when we grew up. They were called saucer nests. Yeah. So these were things that would appear in the swamp areas and stuff that would just be the same type of pattern. So they claim they were mimicking these things. But, people who have studied this stuff, they've said, well, yes, there's all these groups that go out and they'll actually put their signature in them. So you can tell which group made it, but you have to know where to look. But at the same time, the people going out there making those crop circles have had weird experiences while making the crop circles.
That's right. There's something. Yes, I have heard this too. That people they just go out to do it and then they start having weird experiences.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the one of the more interesting ones I heard was someone went out and did this design, and then the next day it came out and the design was twice as big. Because somebody else who he didn't know also got in his head, I need to go out tonight and make this design. So the two designs complemented one another. And they did them without knowing that the other was out there.
Oh, wow. Yep, that's weird.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's probably not UFOs making these things, but even when it's people making these things, there's something weird going on. There's some kind of weird interaction happening.
It reminds me of the architecture and the geometry and stuff that causes people to have altered states. You go into this beautiful structure like a temple or whatever, and it's just, there's something about it it just causes this sort of altered state. And, maybe it is something to do with the geometry, or I don't know. That's just what it made me think of. Like I don't know, maybe it's,
or the
geometrically kill a bunch of grass. It's it causes an altered state.
I mean, and there's definitely some circles that have weird properties to them. People will go into them and feel faint and stuff like that. So who knows what's really going on? I mean, most of them are probably man-made, but there's probably, I think there's an actual phenomena there as well making the circles. It's just very, very infrequent.
Right. That's my take on it as well, is that it's almost, I started thinking of it as it's kind of like a cargo cult, right? That there is an actual phenomena of making these patterns, and the attention given to it has developed into this strange, interesting, almost paranormal art form that people now do that emulate these patterns and expand on them.
Yeah. Yeah.
In an earlier Patreon episode, you read this little short story that I wrote that was just really supposed to be an analogy that was called The Wall. And the point of that was to illustrate how the phenomenon is so broad that we're virtually incapable of drawing it all in at once. You can pan your vision across it and you can take in a certain amount, but it's virtually impossible to see it all. Definitely not all at once. You can focus it on something, and you can focus on this, and you can focus on it, but you can't see it all at once. And what I've been attempting to do is to try to give a broad overview of what's written on this wall. And so it's very, very difficult to be very knowledgeable on every aspect of the phenomenon. The crop circle phenomenon is a part that I have chosen not to delve very far into. Now, I'm obviously aware of certain aspects, like the fact that, the old fairy rings and those kind of things. In other words, there's historical precedent for this type of thing prior to, our modern technological age, right? But at the same time, I am also aware of data that suggests military capability to possibly mimic some of what we're seeing.
Oh, sure.
But it gets so foggy and it's like it's a field of itself, right? And the study of crop circles, I think, is one that almost requires dedicated research into that. So
yeah, I agree with that.
I can't speak very knowledge in terms of, I don't have a great depth of knowledge in that aspect, because I recognize that it's a rabbit hole that will require a lot of time.
I have a question about it. Are there like YouTube videos and stuff now of people doing it, making like ridiculously awesome crop circles? Because it seems there should be.
Yeah, I'm sure there are. The farmers generally aren't too happy with these people.
Right. They're usually, the other claim is like, well, you have to do it in secret because you're basically destroying a bunch of crops.
Yeah.
Or you have to get permission from the farmer. And that is, but a lot of times you can tell there's like an advertisement basically that's put into the field, and the farmers are getting paid.
Yeah. At one time there was a lot of hype behind it. And the claim was that farmers were paying to have them made because then they were charging people to come and see them.
Yeah.
But as the popularity went away, a lot of the circles continued.
Yeah, the circles keep getting made.
So that's kind of a counter argument.
And a lot of times the farmers get mad because everybody wants to come see them, and they're trampling more of the crops, and they're so it's like it's not really to the farmer's benefit to have a bunch of people wandering their fields.
Bill Gates can kiss our ass.
He's just trying to control the crop production.
Well, the other thing we brought up earlier in one of the breaks that we were wondering about was the cattle mutilations, right? So this is another one that's similar to crop circles in that in some cases it seems like something strange may be happening. In most cases, or in a lot of the cases, it seems like you can probably put this down to human agency.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few, but when it's so few, you start to wonder, what if these are not true stories?
Yeah.
What if the people were mistaken? But yeah, there's some odd cattle mutilations out there. But I think most of them are related to either corporate or government interests.
Yeah.
Checking this stuff and leaving a weird scene behind so that it's not obvious what's going on.
Right. But it's just one of those things like the crop circles where I just wonder why it gets attributed to the aliens. It's like what
it's all aliens.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's like that's
or
the part
or
that
it's
seems
all
weird.
demons, or it's all something. It's
Right. And basically what we're saying on this show is the aliens are the demons. And so everyone is right. Right? Is that basically what we're saying?
Like we were saying earlier, people like to sort of simplify things.
Yeah.
They especially if it's something you're not really interested in, you just kind of want to get it out of your radar. Like, oh, I don't like the idea that there could be aliens. Tell me why there's not aliens. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Now I can go back to my life and whatever.
Right.
Watch football and not have to worry about the aliens. But when you try to get to the nuanced stuff and you start digging deeper into it, people are, the people who are just surface level interested, who are like, oh yeah, this stuff is cool. I like to be scared. It's like, but it's not about scaring you. It's about understanding reality when it comes right down to it, because these are the things in reality that don't fit. So what better way to understand reality better and how we interact with it than to look at the things that scientifically don't fit into what we understand to be reality.
Yeah.
And they don't want to hear that. They just want a scary story.
Things
They want to be spooked.
Yeah.
Things that are impossible, yet they happened anyway.
Right. So if they're impossible, but they happen, they're clearly not impossible. And we've created rules that have been broken that clearly aren't correct all the time. They're just more rare phenomena. Like, looking up and seeing the sun in the sky is a very common phenomena, but looking up and seeing something dart around the sky faster than anything should be able to dart around the sky, that's a rare phenomena.
Yeah.
It's not an impossible one. It's just extremely rare.
That reminds me of a quote by Jeffrey Kripal. I had to look it up because I write it down. Whenever there's somebody says something that I think is pretty observant, I write, and he says, our conclusions are a function of our exclusions. I think that's pretty accurate. Things that are impossible are only impossible because of our frame of reference. In other words, if you're unaware of something, it does not make that impossible.
Yeah.
It's beyond your understanding. It's just not necessarily impossible.
And even within the realm of like the last 100 or so years of science, there was a point where they said breaking the sound barrier was impossible.
Oh yes, they
said
a man will never go 200 miles an hour in a quarter mile. There have been errors. Everything I've said this before, and this is actually calls back to boy, I can't think of who said it. It's everything is impossible if you make all the wrong assumptions.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
There have been many achievements that were once thought to be impossible, but they were accomplished in entirely different fashion than what was envisioned. Like
or you
space travel, going to the moon. They once said it was going to be impossible because the rocket would be so heavy it could never lift off the ground.
Yeah.
They never thought to consider that this could be done in stages.
Yeah.
Like I think Heinlein also said, he said, the people who say something is impossible to do need to get out of the way of the people doing it. That's what he said, right? It's
yes.
because people are. It's breaking barriers is something that humans have shown themselves to be very good at, right? We've, like even our own barriers, the ones that are in our minds. Someone is like, this can't be done, or maybe the common knowledge is like, that's impossible, but somebody's out there trying to do it anyway.
And a lot of times, interestingly, like the biggest steps forward come from people not in the fields that they just made the steps forward.
Right, because they don't know what's impossible. Right.
That's right. They're just like, I'm just going to do this thing, whereas everyone in that field is going, you can't. That's impossible. Right. They're like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Right. And so the other thing about, we were saying about frames of reference and where you're standing, and a lot of times it's, you hear these things like, well, that's not possible, or like that isn't rational, or these explanations that are sort of hand waving away certain maybe paranormal experiences or whatever. And I'm just like, how do you know?
Yeah.
Like in the standard model concept of the universe, it's this massively enormous place that's incredibly ancient, right? And we have this tiny little sliver of time. Even for all of human history, it's a tiny little sliver of time relative to the entire universe. How do you know what is and isn't likely or possible? Like from your frame of reference, from the entire of humanity's frame of reference, we don't know. Space is massive and time is very long, right? So there's just and we know that there are common things that take place, something that happens all the time, and then we also know that there are rare events, and who's to say that there aren't exceedingly rare events that are nevertheless possible?
Yeah.
Like what was the Feynman explanation about the chess game? Like you can watch a chess game for a long time, but there are certain moves that rarely take place.
Like castling.
Right. And if you sat down and watched a chess game and you didn't know any of the rules, and your idea was like, I'm going to like reverse engineer the rules by watching the game take place. It's sort of like what physicists are doing with nature.
Yeah.
There's certain things that take place in chess that happen so rarely that you would probably not have any way of deducing that it was something that could happen.
Unless you're playing James Kamak, then it freaking nails you every time.
It happens every game. Right. Yeah.
That's a very good analogy of it.
Yeah.
So I have a question, but we're running out of time here. Last question.
Do a whole nother segment? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we'll do a Patreon after this. But
yeah, we can do Patreon. Sure.
What do you guys think about like standard physical being aliens with nuts and bolts craft?
What do I think about them?
As possible, like, that we've been visited by these, or...
nothing, like I said, nothing's off the table because we can't explain it. We don't have the answers. I think it's less likely than a lot of other stuff just because the distances involved. And again, that they may have completely different tech.
Electric
so it might
universe,
be a completely different thing for them. But I don't see evidence of humanoid beings like us coming here. I think most UFO reports are something else. The beings we're encountering are not extraterrestrial, or if they are, they're not getting here in nuts and bolts crafts. Now, it is entirely possible that probes have gone past here or even landed here. And it's also possible we share the world with extraterrestrials that are outside of our ability to interact with. So they could be here with us and we just don't even know. It's like one of those statements when you get scientists will say, well, there's no other intelligent life in our solar system. Yeah, like us, that we're aware of. But there could be something in the depths of Jupiter 1,000 times smarter than we are.
I was just about to say something like Jupiter. There could be Jovians. How would we even see them?
Right.
The planet itself would cloak them from us. Yeah.
Our concept of aliens being just like us, it's entirely possible if there are aliens out there, they are humanoid or evolved similar to us, or if the panspermia thing works, they're created from the same genetic programming.
They even share our DNA in some respect. Yeah.
Right. But when I look at UFO encounters, the more and more I look at them, the less and less likely the extraterrestrial hypothesis seems to work. They're too diverse. There's too many of them. They're too personal.
Okay. Marty?
Yeah. I don't think that, in my opinion, I don't think this has to be a binary choice. Aliens or not aliens type thing. I think it can be both because...
Yeah, I'm asking I'm not asking is it one or the other. I'm asking what do you think about the possibility of these?
I guess what I'm getting at is that there could be aspects of both in terms of we could be the remnants of an extraterrestrial civilization.
Certainly.
Right? Okay, so I'm not discounting aliens, and odds are there is intelligent life. I mean, in the universe, right? But the fact that, or I'm making a distinction with what we're experiencing, what we see, what has been reported, being that is unlikely, in my opinion, only for a few reasons, right? First and foremost, I would say people tend to say, well, if we can crack superluminal, propulsion, right? If we can build faster rockets, right? Build faster spacecraft, that'll solve it. That gives us stability. You're like, no, it doesn't. There's all sorts of problems in that. First of all, you're thinking that because you can build, that's like saying, well, if I can go 200 miles an hour with a car that has 1,000 horsepower, if I build a car with 2,000 horsepower, I can go 2,000 miles an hour. No, it doesn't work that way. To go a little bit faster gets exponentially more complicated. You can have superluminal, let's say you created a superluminal engine, right? Just to keep it simple, right? You have this engine that's capable of going beyond the speed of light. How are you going to navigate it? You turn it on and you instantaneously run into an asteroid or a planet.
Right.
Like, we haven't even begun to factor in how would you navigate something like that? In other words, it gets exponentially more complicated.
And a small rock or something in space.
Oh, just the dust in space.
Yeah,
exactly. In other words, there's all sorts of problems with that.
Yeah,
Now, coming to full space time, boys.
Right. Then on top of that, what are the odds if in the multitude of different aliens, all these different, you hear these stories of, there's 9 different species of aliens visiting Earth, whatever. Okay.
We're not that interesting.
Right. What are the odds that they're all coming here with the same agenda? They all follow the same rules. They all, for thousands of years.
Yep.
Throughout the existence of mankind, they all came here and followed the exact same, like whatever the
protocols.
We're
a lab.
There's the Star Trek Prime Directive.
The Prime Directive.
Yeah.
I don't buy that.
Well, they've definitely been violating the Prime Directive. I mean, they've been starting religions and
right. And that's just it. And then again, the idea to me, and this is this gets more to the esoteric fundamental questions, in that if when you look at it from the religion standpoint, right? If these intelligences or whatever it is that are coming here are creating or inspiring and encouraging, they're not just inspiring, they're encouraging the development of new religions. Why not shore up the religion you already started?
Yeah.
Why constantly create new ones? And they're always inevitably in competition with the others.
Yep.
In other words, they're not giving us answers, but they're creating all these new questions. It complicates it. I just don't see how a physical aliens from another planet solves these questions.
Yeah, I understand. I get you there, and I agree that it wouldn't. I was just strictly asking what's your opinion on, could this be happening? Not that it explains everything, not that it's the whole story, but could it be part of the story?
What if part of the goal in creating different religions and pushing people in different directions is to get us to be comfortable with the idea of uncertainty and not jump into these sort of tribal arguments with one another? Like, it's intentionally trying to push us to be accepting of one another and accepting the fact that we don't always know, because so many people are just, they need certainty in their lives. And nothing about life is certain. Like, you have the illusion of it here and there, but you never know when things are going to change.
I mean, one of the best parts about life is that it's uncertain, right? That's what makes it exciting. You don't know what's going to happen. So,
what we do know is that this show is going to end.
It's over.
I think those are great answers, guys.
Yeah,
I like
answers. Yeah.
I like both perspectives, and of course, it's also interesting just hearing from your engineering perspective, Marty, the fact that you were a nuts and bolts guy, it's obvious that you have an open mind.
Yeah.
Because you are kicking your old ass right now.
Yeah, that's right. You're kicking your old...
That old guy who believed in the nuts and bolts.
Previous guys.
You just destroyed him, man.
All right.
See, if I had precognition, if I was tapping into future knowledge, I would have never been a nut.
Right. Yeah. Clearly, you have no psychic abilities, Marty.
I think most people getting into UFOs start nuts and bolts because that's where the mainstream
Obvious.
stuff is, and it takes. I think it was for me. It wasn't even Valet. Like Valet should have done it, but it never clicked. Like when I read Valet talking about the fairy faith and UFOs being the same, I was like, oh, so the ETs were the fairies?
I was just like, I just went Von Daniken, Sitchin. I was like, that explains it.
And it wasn't until I read Kenneth Ring's Omega Project where he's showing the similarities in the after effects of UFO experiences and near-death experiences that my brain was like, okay, wait a minute.
Yeah. Okay.
So aliens are interacting with us when we're dead? Nope, that's not working. Something else is happening here. And then everything started following suit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're trying to create this grand unified theory.
Yeah.
Because it taps into so many aspects of the human experience. It's very, very difficult. And again, it's full of contradictions. But I think a lot of that is purposeful.
Yeah,
want us to understand.
Personally, just after learning all this stuff from you guys, like I'm not a unified theory guy. I'm more like there's a bunch of different things happening. That's just the way I look at it. I don't think it's all one.
But they're interrelated, though. I agree.
Yes.
There are many things, but they are interrelated. I provide a lot of examples of how there's overlap on these things. You cannot it's not very easy to make distinctions between these things because there are lots of examples that incorporate all those different aspects of seemingly completely unrelated things.
Well, you can look at it like this. There could be a whole bunch of different people with different agendas using the internet, but you need the internet to interact with them.
Yeah.
So even though they're coming from completely different directions, they could be completely different types of people.
You can still discover the internet.
Yeah.
Like, there's this internet thing, and that's what's making this possible.
They're basically all following using the same protocols.
I'm with you on that for sure. Yeah. Well, this has been great, guys.
Yeah.
The grand unified theory is you need the internet to talk to them.
Got it.
But you don't know, that doesn't tell you who you're talking to or what their agenda is.
Right.
And some of them are tricksters.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Well, thank both of you guys so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, you want to join us on a Patreon episode after this?
Yeah.
Yes.
You guys got time?
Yeah. Seriah, tell people where they can find you. I'm sure everybody that listens to us knows your show, but
wheredidtheroadgo.com has everything Where Did the Road Go related. And if you like heavier music, thelastexit.org.
Yes. If you want to listen to symphonic black metal.
Yes, that is on there.
If you guys want to follow Marty, you can follow him at we'llgettothatlater.com. No, join the Discord.
There you go.
Do you have a website, Marty? You have Monster Truck website?
I do, but it's completely unrelated. It's
So people will, what is it?
monstertrucktechnology.com.
There you go.
Right, cool.
Monster Truck Technology. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening to the show. I hope you enjoyed this one. We love you guys.
You always have.
Always will.
Good night, Adamu.
Get back to work.
You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.